Hi guys, welcome back to History Help for You. Today we're going to be covering Mary the First and Elizabethan government. So we know that throughout most of the Tudors, the sort of structure of power is the same. You have the monarch, the Privy Council, and the court, and those people within the Privy Council and the court have a lot of power, predominantly through patronage, where it's sort of in exchange for loyalty and being good at your job. You get quite a lot of power. That'd be like land and titles. So the structure of this was the Queen at the top, this being Queen Elizabeth, the Privy Council, including the Secretary of State, Lord Treasurer, and Lord Chancellor, and then you sort of have your regional sort of people, like your JPs, your Justices of the Peace, and your sheriffs. And then you also have Parliament on the other side. They're obviously focused in London, and obviously the Houses of Commons and Lords. So the Privy Council, you've got quite a small sort of group, similar to that in Mary's reign, that being about 19 members. Mary had initially about 50, but then she'd cut it down to about 19. And then in Elizabeth's reign, there was about 10 members meeting regularly. This was dominated by professionals like lay people who were good at their job and knew what they were doing, rather than people who were minted and therefore important. And your key figures are William Cecil, Francis Walsingham, and also Robert Dudley, that we will be discussing later on. Daily functions, something about like managing foreign affairs. That's why you have Dudley sort of physically going over to the Netherlands and fighting. Enforcement, overseeing the implementation of the religious settlement. I think this was something that Cecil and Walsingham were quite sort of instrumental about, in the sense that I believe they were both quite Protestant, like quite sort of far Protestant. Security, your main sort of guy on that is Francis Walsingham, your Spy Master General as he is known, and yeah, especially sort of dealing with threats from like Mary Queen of Scots. So your sort of main people. On your left is William Cecil, middle, Francis Walsingham, the Spy Master General, and on the right is Robert Dudley. So who are these people? William Cecil, he was kind of one of your constants within government. He had been in the Edwardian government for a bit. Obviously not sort of to the status that he receives in Elizabeth, but still quite good at his job. He's quite methodical, and Elizabeth trusts him deeply. In the sense that if you need something doing, you're most likely going to William Cecil. And then you've also got Robert Dudley, who was kind of influential within the court because of his prior connection to Elizabeth. Elizabeth and Dudley had known each other since they were children. And they'd both fancy each other. They were originally going to get married. However, Dudley is married, and at one point his wife suddenly falls down the stairs and dies. I mean, it just looks a bit dodgy, and so Elizabeth, despite wanting to, does not marry him because his wife just magically falling down the stairs. It looks a bit scandalous. But yeah, he was kind of like your main military guy, being deployed when we've got the situation with the Netherlands, to kind of go and resolve that. And you've also got Francis Walsingham, who is your spy master. Pretty much, if there was an MI6 within Elizabethan England, this guy would be the head of it. He had spies everywhere, and it was because of his spy network that Walsingham and Elizabeth were able to intercept Mary Queen of Scots being involved in a plot to kill Elizabeth. That was nice. But yeah, first modern spy network. What a cool guy. Yeah, so you had a lot of sort of patronage given out within the royal court. Essentially, if you were close to the Queen, you had a lot of influence. And yeah, monopolies is quite a big one. Monopolies is kind of the concept that you're given, I think you're given like a product and you're like the only one able to sell it. I think it was Essex was given like a sweet wine monopoly, I think it was, and he was the only person allowed to sell that off, you know. A lot of profit. And also land and titles. Kind of what you expect. One of the key things about patronage, I spoke about in the last video, also gold in the speech in 1601. Pretty much, Cecil, she was nearing the end of her reign. She understood that, and so she was sucking up to all the nobility to get what she wanted, and it worked. Elizabeth was quite sort of good in that kind of remark. And yeah, the sort of general structure of government and everyone kind of relying on patronage, and then being there being no, I mean that obviously Dudley was a favourite. However, it didn't mean that he got gifted everything, because Cecil was brilliant at his job, and so was Walsingham. So this helps you reduce factionalism. And your sort of main three factions, you've got your Cecil group, your Leicester faction, and your Essex circle. So your Cecil group, that being William Cecil, and then later Robert Cecil, I think that's his name, the other Cecil. This was all focused on like sort of administrative bit and Protestantism. Robert Dudley, it's called the Leicester faction because he had the title of Leicester, or Earl of Leicester, Duke, I forgot which one it was. That was sort of focused on militant Protestantism, and it was had aggressive foreign policy, whereas Cecil was kind of a bit more laid back and trying to negotiate peace. And then Essex later, kind of in the late years of Elizabeth, when he later rebels in 1601. Yeah, so I mean he gets sent to Ireland to sort some out. He gets completely embarrassed. He comes back, throws the paddy. I think Elizabeth actually slapped him in the face. Actually, no, right. So he turned his back on Elizabeth. Elizabeth turned around and slapped him in the face. He threw a paddy and rebelled. So yeah, that was perfect. We'll learn a lot more about that. Yeah, what an interesting guy. He just had a paddy. Yeah, just a quick summary. Your main ministers, Cecil, Dudley, and Walsingham. Your main guys. You had the court being used as a tool to sort of gain influence and power. And while there was an aspect of factionalism, this was not as bad as, say, something like Edward VI's reign, where Somerset and Northumberland were constantly at each other's throats. Most of these kind of did not like each other, however, worked together in the interest of both Elizabeth and the country itself. So that is it for this video, guys. I'm going to be continuing on kind of government next video, sort of focusing more about parliaments. Thank you.